amazing True Man, host of the True Man podcast and
Hello.
True Man Life Coaching, is the amazing Mike Van Pelt. And then we also
Yeah.
have Walk Star. He runs the GCC, the Global Cooperative Chamber, as well as so many other things, karaoke, and goodness gracious, you go to zoomturtle.com, you see it all. And that is Jim T. Chong. And just so blessed to have you guys here with me today and with everyone. And what we do is we explore topics on leadership. True Leadership is the title of the show. And it's something we are all very passionate about in different aspects and core spots in our lives and in our business and what we do. So we encompass everything here, whether it's parenting, whether it's coworkers, whether it's those that we serve as their leader, wherever at church and different organizations, networking, whatever it may be. It can cover all of that. And this year, all the way through the year, January through December, and maybe even a little into next January due to taking a few Mondays off, we're talking about Leaders Are. And this was born out of writing or typing the word leadership into Google when I was working on my master's thesis. And the number just kept growing like this and pretty much left the computer screen. And nothing was definitive other than, there's the Webster thing and the Wikipedia thing, which is fine, but it just left so many questions. And so I started to sit down and think, what are different traits, characteristics, abilities, skills, all these different things that some of the greatest leaders on planet Earth have? Or if it wasn't something they had, what became more important to them to fix or find the person who was better at it than them to accommodate as a team? And that's a huge part of today, because we are going to talk about a word and an aspect of leadership that is very near and dear to my heart, not just because I was a firefighter, but because I believe we should never stop learning. Now, that said, leaders or learners will be a topic later. But in this case, as a skill, leaders are trainers. Why is that so important? Because as a leader, it is your job to train those up with you. We've got a bad mix out there of some bad leadership where it's, well, if I train them to do better than me, they could take my job. And that's not entirely true. In many cases, believe it or not, if you even ask if somebody wants your job, especially once they see what it's all about, more often than not, they actually don't want it. They want to excel. They want to do their very best in their position and their abilities. It doesn't necessarily mean they want your job. Now, if they do, train them up and maybe when the time comes for you to step away, they take it. Maybe, and believe it or not, this can be a good thing. I know. Watch it, Chris. Watch what you say, because there's people who don't like this. Maybe they go on to another company and do a great job. And then you've got someone else that comes up behind them if you're doing your job right, training them. And so, Jim, I'm going to come to you. You work with so many different people and so many different organizations and building so many different teams. How important is it to you as the leader to make sure people are trained right so it's done right?
Well, very important. Great example. I'm just going to use one of the things that we talk about, karaoke, but, we call it premium karaoke and showcase singing. But the whole thing is that people, you need to know what to expect. And if people are not trained, we implement it. As an example, let's say somebody running the board. If the board's not run right, pretty much everything's affected. The timing of things, the ability to move forward. And so training really dictates a lot of things. First off, just to get things done properly. But also training is just very important to be able to provide consistency in everything that we do. And so I think training is very key to anything happening successfully and efficiently.
Yeah, and such a couple really good points there. And I'm going to start with the efficiency of things and the effectiveness of it. Is when people are trained right and they're trained properly, one, they respect the leader that much more, that you show you care to do that with them. But at the same time, too, when they're trained right, there's a couple different things that can happen here. One is they're doing it right. Number two is after they've learned it right and they start to see different patterns or things, there may be something that comes up, whether maybe it's a new technology. We'll use karaoke as an example. You train them the right way to use the soundboard and the speakers, set it all up, because we know if you don't plug something in right, not only will it not work, you could blow something up like an amp. I've seen it. I was a part of some sound group stuff, and all of a sudden, kaboom, we all turned around and someone was standing there with the wrong cable in their hand. Okay? We knew what happened. And it was a training problem. This person said, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Yeah, they did know what they're doing. They knew how to plug something in. They didn't know the right way to plug it in. Literally, I mean, fundamental thing, right? And yet it cost us an amp that we didn't have time to replace, but had to find time to replace. So not only did they not know, but now they also had a fear that they weren't going to do it right. And then other people are looking at us going, do you not train your people? And now we lost time. We lost profitability because we had to pay for something we shouldn't have had to pay for. And we lost some respect in this. And so when people are trained properly, those types of things don't happen. But the other thing that can happen is innovation. When we've trained them right and we know they're doing it the right way, when they come to you and say, hey, just out of curiosity, have you ever thought of this? Or, hey, I just heard of this new board that actually makes this more effective. Board being a soundboard, still sticking with the karaoke theme here. And Jim takes a look at it and goes, wow, that is better. Yeah, and because, I knew how we were doing this and I saw something, a better way of doing it. What do you think about trying that? And because they've been doing it right, they've done their research, you both have that mutual respect between each other. Because they've been trained, they know that, one, they can come to you with this suggestion. Because believe it or not, there's a lot of people who don't come with training suggestions or ideas because they're afraid to do so, because the leaders always thumb down on them. That's not good. And so, Mike, from a training perspective, and thinking about working with teams or from a coaching perspective, let's go there. Since Mike is the True Man life coach, excuse me, I just lost what I was going to say there. True Man life coach, working with men and working with leaders, how important is it to get them to understand this authenticity that comes from training their people or training those around them, even if it's at home with their family?
Well, it's pretty important. It's pretty important, right? I read something while I was preparing for this. It said, leaders lead and trainers train. And I thought, what a joke. How important is it with your family? In fact, I was doing some research here, opened up John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Great book.
And interestingly enough, I had a bookmark in there, and it's been a while since I forgot this bookmark was actually in the book. It's from my daughter, Abby. If you can see this on the camera, she actually couldn't write dad at the time. I turned out to be a dit, but she did want to. It was a coupon for a high five. So yeah, in fact, I sent her this picture and I said, is this coupon still good? And so, my daughter is getting ready to graduate from high school next year. And I bring that up because that was a pretty cute reminder of what season of life I'm in. Quite honestly, I got a little teared up when I pulled it out of the book, but I'm at a point family wise where, we've trained our kids up and now it's time for them to go out in the real world. And, boy, the real world's a tough place. And, so I always turn to the ultimate leader of equipping people. And so I was looking at this and I thought, I saw this topic. Well, how did Jesus train people? How did he equip people? How did he empower people? And it's interesting, right? Because the religious world exists today just by the mere fact that Jesus Christ walked on the face of the earth and trained and equipped 12 random dudes that didn't graduate exactly at the top of their class. So, and it's interesting, Jesus brought them to places and situations where there were others who needed help. Jesus gave them real teachings. Jesus connected them to God and each other. He equipped them and released them to do ministry. Jesus shared truth and that was new to them. And he modeled and discipled for them when they were all together. Now, isn't it interesting that Jesus did all those things? He trained, he equipped, he prepared. And, why did he do that? Because at one point he knew he wasn't going to be around to maintain his leadership. So he equipped people to do that for him. And that's what all leaders should be doing, regardless of the outcome. So, Chris, you mentioned, well, sometimes people will giddy up and go down the road and go to a new company. Bye. That's part of it. But, I'm a firm believer that if you train and equip your people well, yeah, there'll be some that'll leave, but a good majority of them will be loyal to you because the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Well, the grass is greener where you water it, nurture it, but I'll go down that topic another
Yeah.
I say that out loud. One of the things I'll say, on people leaving, it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Right.
I'm not saying everybody just quit their job and go somewhere else or, start firing people. No. What I'm saying there is quite simply is if you've done your job right and they do, you should feel confident in the fact that they're going to be taking those principles out there. Because remember, the whole point of being a true leader is that we're making this world a better, more inspired place. It's the 3 great I's of leadership: positive influence for massive impact, so others will be inspired to do the same thing. So at least if they did leave, at least barring them taking secrets and things like that with them, which you pray they don't, but the fact that they're taking those principles that were the right way of doing things is actually going to make it better. And we're actually even seeing a shift in leadership and a shift in business. It's less about competition and more about cooperation. There's so many of these companies that are starting to find out the more we can cooperate, the better off we can actually be. And so don't get me wrong, competition can be a good thing, it can be healthy. But it's the same thing in leadership. It's the same thing when we're going top down, is this cooperation of understanding that we have a greater purpose on this planet, and that's to make it a better place, not to make it worse. But we've got to train people to do that. Mike, when you brought in Bible verses, one of the Bible verses that sticks out to me is train a child up in the way they should go.
Yeah.
And they'll never leave from it. Now, this is one of the bridges that I have gapped working in ministry, where I say train a child up. Let's define child. Yes, in the instance of the scripture, they are talking about children. But at the same time, too, if there's something that I'm new at and I'm not fully experienced at, aka a rookie or the new guy or the new person, whatever you want to say there, in a way, I'm being trained up like a child because I've got to learn it from the start. Got to learn to walk before you can run, for the most part, right? So there's nothing wrong with having that and being able to learn that. And one of the things that I remember an old pastor friend of mine said to me one time, I said, if they could have been a permanent student in school, they would. I was like, gross, right? Their point wasn't staying in school all the time. It's being a permanent learner, constantly training to make themselves better. But here's the thing. If you're only doing it for yourself, are you a true leader? Are you being true to other people? Are you being true to yourself and what you claim you're going to do as a leader? You're here to be a servant. You're here to serve others. You're here to share these skills and these abilities that you've been taught, because, again, one of two things happens. Either you help somebody with something they needed, or you find someone who can help you. It's a constant communication thing, and it's a constant thing that we should be more willing to do, and we're not always doing it out of fear of offending somebody and saying, hey, you did okay with that, but you could make it better here. I mean, Jim, coming back to you, even thinking of the karaoke stuff, you're bringing in some major talent there. I've seen some of your posts on social media and some of the singers and things that you've shared with us. And, I think I could carry a pretty good tune. I'm not going to do it on here. Okay. But at the same time, if Jim was afraid to say, Chris, hey, yeah, not bad, but have you tried singing like this? Or, hey, I've got someone over here that could train you to sing up a little bit better. We could have a higher quality. I mean, have all the nice sound equipment you want, but let's be quite honest with you. If someone can't sing, they can't sing. But if we've got a way to teach somebody, so Jim, how do we break some of these fears of going up to somebody and saying, hey, let's train on this, let's work on this? I mean, how do we show compassion in that, like we talked about as servant leaders, to say, without being rude, you need help. Train on this.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want Mike to sing a song first to set the pace. So I'll give him a song maybe next week. So then we'll learn from that and train from that. No, but in all sincerity, one thing, we all have to make in our mindset the decision to be perpetual learner, no matter how good we are at something. You do a great job, Chris. I enjoy these discussions. I was telling you right before we got started, you do a great job putting here. We have been in about 15 minutes. I feel like we have enough for an hour. What we covered here already in 15 minutes, I feel like it's almost like the Matrix, just boom, all that information's there. You just do such a great streamlined job. But the whole thing is, as good as we are always wanting to be learning. That is, in my mind, really important before you volunteer feedback, because the person is not ready for it, doesn't want it, then you're setting yourself up a little bit for a fight. Because I've had people volunteer things to me. They don't have the context. I wasn't oriented towards it, even though I want to listen. But it's just really important that you're paying attention to people's signs. Are they at that moment to really want to learn? And then the other thing is I think you have to understand the motive. If I look at Mike and I want him to be better versus, oh, I just feel like technically this is wrong, I don't really have a reason that I can direct him towards. If it's just, well, it's wrong, Mike, you just got to correct it. That's different than me having a focal point that's based on what benefits him. Mike, I want people to respect what you have to say. And here's a thought I had that can help you, and then always be invited from that. Are you open to it? Yeah. Because I think that's a fair question. If they say no, then I don't think it's really an open door. But make sure they're receptive, and make sure they understand the intent of it. It's not just to correct something, but Mike, you better, because I want you to be able to have to be heard. So I think bring it back to what they're trying to achieve. And if you link something and they're ready to receive it, I think that's very, very key. And I think that's very sensitive. Now, they may or may not like it. That's not the point. They should at least consider it. And then finally, again, the motive, like what we talked about, why you're doing it, is very important. So hopefully that gives a little bit of, insight into the way I look at things.
Yeah, and so I was thinking I had to grab my sheet and move it forward here. Was thinking about going back to the servant leaders, because servant leaders do train not only themselves but others up in the way they should go. And I was thinking, as you were talking, Jim, a few of the words that we were using during servant leadership of leaders are open. And if everybody remembers back then, we talked a lot about open door policy. When people know you're open, and again, there's boundaries and everything else. We're going to go into that because that was a deeper discussion back then. But they'll recognize your vulnerability, your authenticity through your vulnerability, and your genuineness. And so if you've already been training together, or say you've got someone new, or there's something new that comes up at home to work on your kids with, they're getting bullied at school and this is the first time it happened, or someone said something that didn't quite register the way it should, and now it turned into a bad word or something, or maybe the way they responded to somebody, more from a fighting perspective than did it really need to happen this way, because that happens in my house a lot with brother and sister. Hey, you don't really need to look at it this way. But if you built that authenticity and that genuineness that you care, and you also allow some of your vulnerabilities to say, hey, 90 point something % of the time, the reason why I'm telling you this is because I did it and I found out the hard way it was wrong. This is why we train. This is why it's okay to come to me. So when you go to them, like Jim was saying, by being open with them, being compassionate with them, and remembering, I'm glad he said this, remembering what their goals were in this. Again, if you're, this is going to go to next week, developing them correctly and training with them, you'll know these very things. If you're listening to them, remember, leaders are listeners, leaders are communicators. If you're doing those very things, you will know the right, wrong, and indifferent, better, good, better, best, and ugly ways of being able to interact with each other and share with each other how things should go and how you can train them further. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to hit every single mark every single time. Maybe there's something that you approach them and they say, hey, that's not how I learn, and I've been trying to tell you that. Oh, shoot, that's how I learn. Okay, so find the person that can train them. Mike, your thoughts, especially thinking about like working with our kids, especially when, like I said, when things are happening real fast and we're trying to figure things out, and we're at these different stages of life. I mean, I've got an adult child, plus I got 2 young kids, and so I'm really bridging a lot of different gaps here on different ways of teaching and training my children. in the way they should go. And so what are your thoughts on, especially at home, being able to train them up in the way they should go, especially with all the different aspects of what's coming at people in this society, in this
Yeah,
world?
I think it's the same regardless of whether you're a parent or you're at work. Let me explain that. So I was referencing John Maxwell, the 21 laws of um, irrefutable leadership, and he's talking about the law of empowerment. He says, to lead others well, we must help them to reach their potential. That means being on their side, encouraging them, giving them the power, and helping them to succeed. Interestingly enough, the immediate sentence after that is, that's not traditionally what we're taught about leadership. Now, I read you a couple of those sentences because it's really our job as leaders and as parents to help our children as well as our employees when we're at work reach their full potential. That's what leadership is all about. And, if you're going to lead people, you need to equip them. Otherwise, they'll just kind of go off on their own and do their own thing. And I think we see a lot of that going on in the world today. And, more times than not, I can't blame the person that does it. I have to blame the leader, unless the person they're trying to train and equip, just doesn't care. And I know there's a lot of that going on as well, unfortunately, but I just see leadership as, at least I've always thought of it this way. I want to help people be the best that they can be. I want to equip them to be the best they can be. And if I can do that, then, that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, and a term that comes to mind that we use in the fire service that we tell everybody, especially when they're new or young on the job, is don't freelance.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, don't go freelancing. One, stick to your officer, stick to the senior that's with you, that's teaching you and training you, because one, you're going to build up camaraderie. But one of the things that was always refreshing was not just when your officers or the chief that was in command, say of a fire, would come up to you and say, hey, everybody, great job. Clearly your training was working. So glad we've been working on this, stuff like that. As much as it was too, when civilians would come up, whether it be the homeowner or the neighbors, whatever, come up and go, man, when you guys got out of there, it just looked like a hot knife through butter. Ended there. I just realized what that sounded like. But yes, we're going into the fire. But it was, and even though they made, to the untrained eye, there's a lot going on there. But to them, it looked like we jumped off the truck, yanked the hose, went in. All of a sudden, the driver was hooked to the hydrant. Someone else on the roof cutting a hole. Someone else just went in. What were they doing? Well, they were doing search and rescue. Oh, what was this crew standing out here in the yard for, doing nothing? Oh, believe it or not, they could become the most important crew there, which is the rapid intervention crew. God forbid something goes wrong. But the point is people kind of, man, when you guys show up, it's just so streamlined. It's like, how do you guys do that? Like, it's just amazing. Training. That's the short answer.
Yeah.
Shortest answer. One word: training.
Yeah.
We train together. And the thing is, on the training together, it's not even just the crews in their station. It's training citywide. It's training by battalion. It's training with different members and going down to the training grounds and working with the recruits. So many different aspects, because at any point in time, especially as an acting officer, you could get moved during the day. So I could start at one station and be driving, and they go, "Hey, we need an officer. Are you willing to go, or you're gonna go?" Depending on how it's going. And so now next thing I know, I'm on a whole nother side of town. I'm in a whole nother battalion. I'm on a truck I may not have started on. I'm with a crew that I may or may not have a lot of personal connection with because I wasn't stationed with them. Here's the thing. I know for a fact when those lights and tones go off, we're going to do our jobs. Because we train. Because we know, hey, listen, if this happens, this is what we're doing. If this has this, what we're doing. If something goes wrong, hey, start asking who wants to, what are we going to do? How do we adjust? How do we pivot? And our training kicks in. And my kind of final, so to speak, remark on this is keep in mind when you train. And this is going to speak more into next week when we talk about development, because training and development has to go hand in hand. For the most part, or on average, if you will, the thing you trained on last or trained on the most is going to be what you fall back on. when crisis hits or a situation arises. So my question to all leaders out there and anybody else that's looking to be a leader or has a leader that they're following right now, are you training? And are you doing it to make yourself stronger and better? Mike, closing comments for you and how to connect with you.
Wow, that was pretty stout, Chris. I don't know if I could top that. Yeah, you can reach out to me. My website is truemanlifecoaching.com. You can send me an email at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com and check out my podcast, True Man Podcast, which is also on truemanlifecoaching.com.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any closing remarks on that, or you gonna leave it at that?
Man, I'll tell you what, you summed it up about as good as anybody can, I think, really, Chris. I mean, if you're going to be a leader in anything, I don't care if it's Little League baseball. I mean, you should be training, developing, and figuring out ways to not only for yourself to be successful, but to help make the people around you successful as well.
Yeah. Jim, closing comments from you and how to reach you. Oh, he's muted. You're muted. You're muted. Nope. We don't got you.
Well, so summing everything up for Jim.
Oh, okay. Now there we go.
There he is.
It's a technology thing. When I summarized, just the training, just being, having people being receptive. Did you hear that, or did I get disconnected?
No, we didn't hear anything when I switched to you.
Okay, got it. Well, that's a whole other thing we can revisit another time. But I love what you're talking about in terms of leaders, our trainers, and it's very key. It's very key to understand we have a responsibility as leaders. It's not just about, hey, follow me. You got to be able to provide something, I love what you said, Mike. The resources are so very key. And so thank you so much for that. And, when you're giving people feedback, just a quick half-a-minute summary, I just basically said that make sure they're receptive, make sure they want it, and then help them understand why you're giving it, like what you were saying, Mike, because I want you to be better. It's not just, it's got to be right, because it's got to be right. It's because I want you to be better. I want you to have the influence you want, Mike. Does that make sense? Make sure they understand why you're giving it. But you can reach me at jimtchong.com. Also at, of course, zoomturtle.com. We don't want to lose sight of that. That has the most buttons ever on it. And I can train people how to use it. So to your point there, be the leader there, right? But Chris, back to you. I love what you do. I look forward to this on Monday. So thank you.
Yeah, and so do I, gentlemen. So first of all, while I have this chance, thank you guys as always. It actually has been and will continue to be amazing. And so, I made that comment when I did about training and what you fall back on, most likely be what you last trained on or what you trained on the strongest. And one of the things I want to say, because this will come up next week, is don't forget your basics. Don't forget the basics. And the reason why I say that is because I want to credit Mike and Jim for something here. When we first started this show, I had spent a period of time where I was doing a lot of training. So it was more, I was the teacher, I was the trainer, I was the coach, and there wasn't a lot of conversation other than some one-on-one, some Q&A at the end. When we first started this show, first 2 weeks, both Mike and Jim said, Chris, got to train you up on something here. Need to make it a little more conversational. And ever since then, I went, oh my goodness, they're right. And sometimes that happens because I fell back on the thing I was doing the most. And yet I had two guys sitting here going, oh, this is great. We get to talk. So, and I'm a talker. So yeah, there's that. But the point is, don't be afraid of feedback. Don't be afraid of asking for it. Don't be afraid to give it. But do it with a compassionate heart. I mean, if some tough love has to happen, tough love has to happen. It's just the way that it is. But then train on it. Give the understanding and intention of why it's so important to be doing so. That's it. It's that simple. It really is. You don't have to overcomplicate it. You can have fun doing it, pending the topic, because there are some topics out there that, yeah, it's pretty serious. But you can make it easier than it seems to be without inundating everybody, without boring everybody, without making it just another training. No. You don't have to do that. I promise you. Look at how much fun we just had today talking about a topic that a lot of people try to stay away from. Okay. Because they're like, oh, it's training. We got to sit in the classroom. You don't have to. You don't have to. Promise you. You want to learn more on that? You can email me, chris@eaglefirenrichmond.com. I'd love to have that discussion with you because I love talking about training and how to build your systems and training, especially as leaders. Gentlemen, thank you again. Truly an honor and a blessing. Thank you all so much for watching today. Or if you're catching on the replay, feel free to like, comment, and share this, as I know many of you are seeing this on Facebook. And as always, you need to get a hold of us. Let us know. God, have your best day ever by making every day great. Remember, can't never did. God bless us all.